Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the sessions for part 3 with Rebecca Bender. As I promised you a couple weeks ago, we were going to have some pretty powerful conversation about all kinds of things. Our guest is the survivor of sex trafficking. She is an author of an incredibly powerful book. I'm going to let her in this episode talk a bit about the book. She's a powerful speaker. She also helps with law enforcement as a consultant and CEO of Elevate Academy, which is a school for victims of sex trafficking, for survivors of sex trafficking. And in between all of the things that Rebecca Bender is doing in her life, she's managed to finish a master's at seminary school recently. And she also has 4 daughters that she raises, and she's an amazing wife who last week began sharing with us just the journey of being a wife now, who's come out of this sex trafficking, who survived abuse in various ways, and who survived the enemy's attacks against her as a woman. And all of those attacks have everything to do with never wanting her to become a wife and a mom. And then, of course, Christina Reynolds, who is my sidekick and my sister in Christ and an incredible worship leader right here for us on the sessions. And actually at the International House of Prayer in Kansas City. Welcome back, ladies.
Hi, thank you.
All right. So yeah, we stopped last week in the middle of a powerful conversation, and you were really, really touching all of us with your journey to be a wife and to be able to experience intimacy, not just with your husband, but with other people. How did your journey out of abuse impact your ability to connect and be intimate, even with your friends, to be an honest, open person,
Yeah, I mean, so much shame is associated with a life of what I've been through. And we say human trafficking, and I think the issue of trafficking has become such I don't want to say popular isn't the right word, but it's an issue that everyone's talking about and wants to be involved in. We have great things that we'll get to talk about in a minute on how to find your lane, how to get involved in the fight. But just to pull it back to answer your question, I don't want to sterilize what I've walked through by using a term that's become so commonplace that we don't remember that what happened was I was forced into prostitution for 6 years. So for 6 years, lived as a prostitute, drug addicted, physically abused, arrested. Like, it's a lot. And I think when we think of human trafficking, we're picturing, I don't know what, but we forget we're picturing real trauma.
We're picturing little girls on the other side of the world, and you're right. This is such an umbrella phrase in some ways for a lot of forms of abuse. I mean, pornography, I think, is about trafficking. I've often said, I don't think any little girl grows up fantasizing to be a porn star or fantasizing to be a prostitute.
Well, I think there's so many, when you're looking at the legal definition of human trafficking, when it comes to children, any form of commercial sex is considered exploitation of children. So you have to be under the age of 18. You do not have to prove force, fraud, or coercion, and you don't have to have a third-party perpetrator, which means any form of commercial sex, which means pornography, prostitution, webcams, cam girls, strip clubs, private parties, any of that with a minor is considered human trafficking. With an adult, any of that is considered trafficking if there is a third-party perpetrator that's profiting for something of monetary value. So if you have a girl in a strip club, she's 19, she's getting all the money herself, there's no third person that's taking the money, that's not human trafficking. That's her being a stripper. If you have somebody who, now you can pull that complex nuance back and go, well, why does someone get involved in a form of commercialized sex, which is stripping? Why does someone do that? What are the vulnerabilities? What are the desensitizations that she experienced as a child? Right? So you can pull that back and really define what is choice, really, if you have all of these lack of opportunities and traumas. Is it really like, now I'm healthy and adult and I can make a healthy, informed choice? Well, maybe not. Maybe hasn't been a lot of opportunities for you. Maybe you grew up in poverty. Maybe your mom was in prostitution and your mom's mom and your aunts. And so the desensitization to commercial sex exists within your lifestyle. And so choice feels very subjective. And And I think Exodus Cry and Benji, they've done great videos on YouTube that are just 2-minute clips on what is choice. And I think they're really helpful for us. But in terms of looking at that from the lens of prosecution, there has to be a third party perpetrator that's getting something of monetary value. It doesn't have to be money specifically. We've seen people exchange game consoles, Wiis, drugs, because it's so anything you can add a monetary value to, if someone is profiting off of that, that's when it becomes trafficking. Only for an adult. Does not have to prove any of that if it's a child.
Rebecca, I just, I'm looking at some of the comments, and, Doreen says, you're such an inspiration. And she'd love to know what inspired you to write your book. But I'm also going to ask you what inspired you to really start your organization as well.
Yeah, it's good. I remember just wanting to be normal. I felt like I just wanted to be a normal girl. I just wanted to know what it was like to make friends. You talked about learning to be intimate with people. I can remember stepping into church for the first time after getting trafficked, and you're invited to you're meeting all these new friends, and they're welcoming because you live in this town now, and they're like, we should go to coffee. And you think, oh, great, this is going to be lovely. What do you say when they go, so where are you from? And you're like, Vegas. And you just wonder how this conversation is going to go. And I can remember not wanting to be really transparent because I didn't totally trust people yet. I didn't know how I was going to be received. And quite honestly, I don't know that I had the right words to my experience either. I kind of felt like, I don't even know why I said yes, right? I couldn't put those whys. And so in a previous episode, Cynthia, you had asked me, or you had made the statement that I was good at explaining the whys. And I so appreciate you saying that. I would have never thought that about myself. But I think from getting lots of hard questions from friends, from people in the crowd sometimes when you're at an event, from your family, it caused me to really seek out the why. And why didn't I run? And why? And I remember thinking of how important language was. For a long time, I used to share my story by saying, and then I got out of the car, and then I went into the room, and then I signed up, and then I did this, and I. And finally, I was like, Lord, why did I do that? Why didn't I just hike up skirt and run? Why didn't I fight? Why didn't I? And I can remember feeling this moment of, I complied out of fear. And that's when I started shifting my narrative. And instead of saying, and so I got out of the car, I started saying, and so I complied out of fear. It's a very different purpose than just feeling like I'm going along with it. That wasn't it. But it took the questions to get me to seek the why. And through that experience, it was what led me to start my ministry and write a book. And I think part of that was sitting at the kitchen table, doing my morning devotions. I remember trying to get up early before my small little kids started coming out. I can just remember sitting at the kitchen table and the sun started to come up. And normally what's beautiful for a lot of people, the sunrise over your morning devotion, I felt sick. And I heard my trafficker say, his voice ringing, time to come in, time to go in, time to go in. Sun was up, you can come home. And I remember feeling like the Lord said, how can you sit here and do nothing? How can you sit here in your warm, comfy house with your nice cup of coffee when you know what it's like to be more afraid to go home than you are to get in the car with a stranger? And that sunk in, being more afraid to go home than to get in the car with a stranger on the street corner. You know how fearful that would be if someone asked you right now at midnight to go stand on a street corner and get in a stranger's car, how afraid you would be? Imagine being more afraid to go home, where you should feel your safest. And I thought, you're right. How can I do nothing? And so I decided that I was going to put my company up for sale, start a ministry, write a book. I had no clue. I self-published my first book. It was not that great. I was super not healed. And I knew that the Lord was going to call me to write a memoir, but I wanted to save it for a traditional publisher. And it took me probably 7 years before I built up, and before God felt it was good timing, that I knew that I had the whys answered. I'd done the work to figure out that I could help regurgitate for women. But also during that time, I tried my hand at a lot of things. I thought, am I called to policy? And so I got involved in learning about laws and vacator and Trafficking Victims Protection Act and the state and Senate bills within House voting committees and lobby days. And then I thought, well, maybe I'm called to do crisis response. And I became an emergency certified foster parent, my husband and I, for trafficked teens. We tended a trafficked daughter. And I did street outreach, and we went on crisis calls at local motels in the middle of the night with detectives. And I would get spit on and called an old hoe. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna show you old, girl. I'm sit you down, I'm gonna tell you. And I thought, oh, this isn't for me. And I just tried my hand at lots of different things until I realized what I was good at. What I didn't do was say, maybe I'm not called to trafficking. I said, I'm not called to this lane, but I am called to this field. And so with that, we started this Find Your Lane kind of part of our ministry. It's an online quiz, an e-course, a pamphlet. It's all free. Anyone can go take the quiz and get the download. I mean, just go to our website. But it's really helping people find the 9 different ways that you could get involved in the fight of trafficking. And that came about because I took 10 years trying all the lanes out myself and realizing, I call it, I Marie Kondo'd my career, when I'm like, crisis response, no thank you. And then I would go into the next thing. And it's been so great to be able to take all that and come back and help other people find what they're really good at and use it to do something to fight human trafficking.
You know, it's funny, I'm listening to you and through the last few weeks that you guys have been watching, in the last few episodes, I know you know that because it's been on the screen, you know, Rebecca Bender, you can find her at RebeccaBender.org. And, you know, we've been doing our best to really get you connected to her so that you can find her book, so that you can find help, because Rebecca she has so many practical things that she gives to people struggling with a lot of issues that are a part of her journey. They're a part of my journey. They're a part of the journey of anybody who feels, I think, sexually marginalized or abused, or feels like they have just low self-esteem, feels like they can't get out of the mess that they're in. So that's the thing, Rebecca. It's like I always want to encourage people to remember and to understand that while the circumstances of our testimonies may look very different or may look a lot the same, the emotions that we're all dealing with, someone who's never been sex trafficked can deal with, you know? And so I don't want you to turn off because you think, oh, well, maybe Elevate Academy is not for me, or maybe these teachings, while they're so great, they're for my next door neighbor, they're not for me. Because learning to love yourself and learning what your identity in Christ is for each and every one of us. And, you know, we've been focusing a lot on women who win and on victory in the sessions, in these virtual home sessions. And I think it's probably because I've been at home really going, you know, God, how as a woman do we win in the world today? You know, how as a woman do we connect to other women who win and who experience victory? God, what does victory look like for all of us, male and female? And when I'm asking those questions, I'm looking for those answers for all of us. So I think it's important, Rebecca, that I asked you, what are some questions that you wish that people would ask you that they don't? And one of the questions you sent was, you know, one of the things you wrote back was, trafficking feels really big. How do you encourage the average person to get involved? So I love that, because, you know, I'm watching people who are even chiming in, asking questions from the studio audience. And how do we get involved? How does the average person get involved in fighting against this?
Yeah, I love it. And I love when we get to talk about ways to help people, you know, do what God's calling them to do and try out the different ways to fight trafficking. And so I would encourage people, one, take the course so you can find what lane you really are scoring highest in. It's just a fun, interactive quiz. I tried not to make it too dark, you know, it's not dark or anything. I tried to make it fun so it can feel palatable. But then once you get that results, we give you a ton of information on where to learn more. And so I would also encourage you to do some research. And that means learning about trafficking in your community, finding out what stats are, like realistic, reputable sources of statistics in your area. I would find out what other anti-trafficking groups exist in your city. Google human trafficking and then put your city name in and see what comes up. There's oftentimes lots of small grassroots nonprofits that are doing this work that just don't have the exposure and the marketing that a lot of the bigger groups have. And I love all the big groups too. I'm a consultant for A21 and IJM, and I think they're all doing incredible work. And sometimes though we forget about the one little safe home that only has 4 beds and is helping 4 single 19-year-old girls. And we don't know about them because they don't have a marketing budget because they're small. And they all matter, and getting involved in all of them matters. But I think it's important to at least take a pulse on your community and what's happening, because even if you want to get involved in larger policy issues, preventive issues, things that I know, larger groups can help with, it just helps you to know what type of trafficking is taking place in your community when you know the pulse on your city. But like you said too, Cynthia, I think it's important to know that whether you've been trafficked or not trafficked, been abused or not abused, experienced trauma or not trauma, what I find is that we're all a lot more alike than we are different. And at the end of the day, we all have a desire to love and be loved. We all have had something that we've encountered that has been embarrassing to admit publicly, that has caused a deep-rooted root of something that has to be taken care of. We all have had those 3 things, right? Need to be loved, something embarrassing or shame. That's why Brene Brown and vulnerability is so important, because we're all talking about the 3 things then that we all have in common. When we can give grace, take down judgment, and be a part of realizing that we're all a lot more alike than we are different, you get to know, you get to utilize and access each other's resources and tools. Yeah. because we're all fighting a similar fight. Might have different faces and different experiences, but it's all very similar at its root.
Yeah. Can you talk about Elevate Academy?
Yeah. So we run an online school for survivors of trafficking. We have 700 students that have gone through this program. It's available in 3 languages. And we're just excited about all the growth that God's done. It started with me. I was finishing school online, and we were training lots of cops, and we would get survivors that would reach out and say, how did you figure out how to turn your story into like something that's solutional? And we want to be mentored. And I thought, well, I can't, at the time I was living in my small, tiny town and they lived other places. And I thought, well, how do you mentor someone from afar? I don't know how to do this. But as I finished school, it kind of hit me one day, and I knew it was the Holy Spirit. And it was like, he said, if you can get a master's online, you can mentor online. And you're not the only survivor who lives in a community where services don't exist. And so I just replicated what my school was doing. We started with 5 girls. I just put it on Facebook like, hey, I'm starting a 16-week mentoring group if anyone wants to join. And in 5 years, we went from 5 to 700 women. And now we have teachers and coaches and mentors. And we're just so blessed. And we obviously love to partner with people. So if anyone wants to be a part, donate your time, your skill set, your finances. We're putting survivors from almost 20 new students a month right at this rate, and it's growing constantly. And it's not just, I think for me, we all can do something. We all can find our lane: prevention, restoration, policy, demand reduction, whatever the things are. For me, I knew that I remember running, and I remember getting on food stamps and government housing and riding the public bus. And I remember thinking, now what? And everyone talks about like, yay, they're rescued. And I thought, you have no clue what that feeling is the next morning though, when you wake up with nothing. You got a few $100 in your pocket. You don't even have a pillow or a fork. You got a little girl that's hungry and you've got to walk to the food stamp line. And you think, what am I going to do with the rest of my life now? I'm 27 years old, with a criminal record. I have a huge gap in job history. I have more PTSD. I barely even know Jesus. Like, now what? And that's what we go after. We go after the now what. And it's just crazy what God's doing in women's lives to bring, holistic care and career exploration and purpose and helping people explore. Are you good at painting or are you good at accounting? Some people have no clue. They've been used for one thing and they don't know what they're good at. And we get to let them explore what God created them to do and then help them create a tangible, like actionable roadmap to actually get there. And it's been a really fun journey.
I love I love the work of Elevate Academy because it's
Yeah.
online. That means that, wherever you're from in our audience, and we have young women and men here from South Africa, from England, from all around Europe, all around the United States. It just doesn't matter. You can find them,
Yep.
and
Yeah, we're in 6 countries right now, 6 countries, 3 languages, 700 students. And
awesome.
so the great thing about Elevate is it impacts everywhere. When you partner with Elevate, you're partnering probably with survivors in your very own community that are showing up on your lobby day, testifying at your house hearing. And we're teaching them how to do that. We're teaching them how to tell their story with purpose. So when you partner with us, you get to partner with leaders in your community and help make sure that they get the education and the opportunity that exists in your town. And so we're grateful for anyone that wants to partner with us, and we have lots of information on our website. And we're always happy to partner too. If people have questions, and like, I live here, how many students are in my town? We can run a report and get a number back to you right away. That's confident. We're not going to give out any survivors info, but we could say, we have 52 survivors in Dallas, Texas alone. We have 38 in Orlando. We've got, 1 in Manassas, Massachusetts. We've got, so we can come up with, tell you what the numbers are, and so that it's really working in your town.
We need to talk a lot more about that, and because I think community impact is something that we're all called to, in the body of Christ. And if you have a heart for this, and that there are 52 survivors where you are, then maybe 22 of them need Jesus and would come to your home study, or you could turn them on to programs like Elevate Academy, where they can get help and have a second chance. And
and some of the biggest things that I remember the enemy whispering to me when I first got out was like, well, why don't you just go turn one trick on your own? Why don't you just sell yourself one time without a trafficker? Then you'd have Christmas money for your baby. Just do it once without him. Then you and that temptation when you can't provide a birthday party for your kid because you just ran from your trafficker. That's huge. I mean, we've talked about starting something like Birthday in a Box. We have over 90% of our students have at least one child. 90% of our students are single moms. You know what a Birthday in a Box would do for single moms? Like,
wow.
when we can partner you with the survivors in your community, the need that you could meet, you could go be the hands and feet, literally, of Jesus to people that really need help in the middle of their now what,
Yeah. I am out of time, and I got to tell you, but I'm out of time this week. But Rebecca, I just want to invite you to come back, because what I want to do is always make time for you and your organization and your work.
Thank you.
I think, Christina, you would agree. Like, if there's anything we love to regularly do with these sessions, and if there's anything I love to regularly do, it's to highlight the work that God's doing around the world through powerful women and men who just have a heart and are in it for the right reasons, So I want to invite you back, Rebecca. And I was thinking about what you said about the now what, you're helping women who are looking at their lives going, now what? And I'm very aware that I am a now what because of Jesus. Christina is a now what, because of Jesus. And you're a now what waiting to happen, whoever's watching. And you're the now what, Rebecca, you're what can happen next. And I think the best place to close would be on this comment that someone wrote in, and it's so beautiful. And I want to read it to you. And it says, Rebecca, the trafficking, this is from Sophie. And she says, the trafficking couldn't take your beauty. You're beautiful inside and out. I rejoice for such a powerful story, free in Christ.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. Thank you so much.
And your freedom just comes across, and I'm trying not to lose it, because, I'm like, I got to do the business of this program, but man, your journey just really touches my heart and my soul. And I'm grateful to you, Rebecca, for being you're just true. You're just true to who God made you, and you're true to him, and you're true to helping other women. And I love you for that. And you have a friend and a supporter in me for that always, and thank you for my book. I've enjoyed and been impacted, not just by the book, but just by your heart to even remember me, you know, when you wrote it. And we really had a beautiful connection, you guys. At least I sure did. And I just thought, this is a special sister, a special woman. You know?
It was so fun to hang out with you. And I felt the same. Very, very antied by you. You were so fun to be with there at that trip. So thanks for having me on, and thanks for your continued support. It's been fun.
Thank you. And is there anything that we didn't get to that's on your heart that you want to leave us with in closing?
I've loved this. I'm so glad that you took the time to go through all of 3 of the sessions, the parts, because I think all of them mattered, right? The journey matters, the transformation matters, and then the what you get to do today for Jesus matters. And so this was a really great opportunity, and I'm confident that there will be a lot of viewers that get to hear more about items at the buffet, so they can go after their own freedom, which is available to you. Yeah, it truly is.
Christina, is there anything you want to say before we go?
I think it was so succinctly, everything was shared, like you said, the 3 major things. I myself am like, have always felt overwhelmed, but I'm definitely going to go onto your website and check that out and just get going. I know a lot of the other women that were a part of the group with have been like, how do we get started? And you've just provided all the details. So thank you so much, so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Excited.
We have a couple of members in the audience today who are a part of another series I do called Girl Club. As girls and members of Girl Club, we've been very interested in how we can get involved in sex trafficking, what we can do, you know, to deal with this issue and to help. So thank you for the tools that you did provide. And man, I mean, for all of you watching, you have been a part of 3 very, very special sessions. I am Cynthia Garrett, and we'll see you next week.
Because it's step by step, day by day, moment by moment, I'm pressing in and leaning into your arms of grace. It's step by step, day by